Welcome to today's episode where we're going to discuss low ball offers, when to counter, when to accept, and when to walk away. Okay, so let's jump in. So this is a very common thing in our market. Honestly, I think it's in every market. It's not unusual to get a low offer. And basically what you've got here is with a low offer, you've got to try to figure out what is the buyer trying to accomplish? Is it genuinely that's all they can afford? Therefore, they're shopping out of their price range, and that actually has nothing to do with you? Or are they trying to get just an amazing deal? Or is there something about the home that actually puts it back into that price range where they're lowballing? So what I think you should do is, first off, what is a lowball offer? A lowball offer for our market is typically 10 to 20% off or more. That would be a lowball offer. And yes, for a buyer, sometimes they're not thinking about the fact that they could actually insult the seller and hurt their chances of getting the deal together. If you are a buyer and you are planning on submitting a lowball offer, I highly recommend that you have some verbiage or basically a reason for why you're making that lowball offer. Otherwise, as a predominantly listing agent, I am completely shocked when I open an email, the agent just sent me a text saying, sent you an offer, and I open it and it's significantly off the list price with no explanation, because that doesn't actually help you. If you're the buyer and you're making that lowball offer because of a crack that you saw in the foundation, the roof looks like it needs to be replaced, the windows are all broken, then share your feedback as to why you're doing the lowball. Otherwise, what happens a lot of times is your agent just submits the lowball, the listing agent takes it to the seller, and the seller shuts them down and says absolutely no. Because as a listing agent, I'm not sure what your reason is, and I'm not going to guess at that. And hopefully it's not because I've overpriced it. So unfortunately though, remember, sellers are the ones who set the price. Sometimes the listing agent has given their advice, given them the numbers, and the seller still wants an aspirational price on it. So it's not always up to the listing agent. Part two, and to me, this is the most important. Don't take it personally. I have taken some humdinger, stinky offers to sellers before and walked them through it and just frankly said, look, I know your home is listed at $310,000. This person is offering $260,000. If they cannot afford more than $260,000, then they're shopping out of the range. However, basically looking at the pre-approval letter being from out of state, the earnest check being from out of state, there's a good chance here that we just need to educate the buyer and that they're not familiar with our market. And then what we do is, even though their agent did not give us a reason for the lowball, we actually will counter back very close to the list price and then provide the numbers as to why the home is worth that, and remind them of all of the items, like the recent roof has been updated, the electrical has been updated. Even though these are things that are in the marketing material, for whatever reason, maybe somebody has missed that and not passed it on to the buyer. And we've had really great luck with it. And again, I remind you that if they've offered $260,000 because they're only pre-approved for $260,000, but you know that your value really is $300,000 to $310,000, that's not on you. That is on them and on their agent for showing them homes that they can't afford. So don't take it personally and really look at what is it that the buyer is trying to accomplish, and is there room to educate or room to negotiate? So rather than just shutting it down and saying no. The flip side of just completely declining an offer, because sometimes I will recommend that my seller do that, is that even though we are declining, I hate the word rejecting because it sounds so much harsher. Do you agree? Like rejected, I feel like that comes with a big red stamp or something. So we are declining the offer. based upon it only being on the market for this time, or based upon the fact that our comparables show that this is a fair price, we would be very open to seeing a different number from you. Now, what typically happens in that situation is the buyer's agent will say, well, give us a counter back, give us a counter back. If they made an offer of $260 on a 310 home that really is priced great and has only been on the market one day, I do think it's fine if you decline and allow that buyer to get more realistic and bring something back to you. Otherwise, what I would recommend, if you're listed at 310, they've offered 260, maybe you counter back at 308 and say, we're super excited to work with you and we hope to put a deal together. So sometimes it's a mindset of not being offended, not just ghosting them and not responding. And believe it or not, a lot of times you can still keep these deals together. So don't take it personally, don't get mad, and then determine, can you educate or negotiate? If you can't do either of those things, then declining, rejecting is totally acceptable, okay? But the name of the game, guys, is to try to get the deal together. If you're just running around rejecting every single offer that comes in, then that's not really the whole point of the negotiations. Even if you are not willing to come off the list price, there's still a more appropriate way to respond other than just simply rejected. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you give the seller a deadline and you submit the offer to the listing agent on Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. and you give a deadline of Saturday at 5 p.m. and that deadline comes and goes, you put the timeline on yourself. Now the seller and the listing agent actually have no obligation to even respond. So before you do that, make sure that your agent has contacted the listing agent and said, hey, we've got a really tight timeline on here because maybe your buyer is only in town for a short period of time. Maybe they've got a backup home that they want to pursue. And that gives the listing agent the chance to say, here's the thing, the seller is traveling today and won't be reachable. They're on an overnight flight to Italy and won't be reachable until late tomorrow afternoon. And I, as the listing agent, my daughter's baby shower is tomorrow afternoon. So it's not going to be realistic that we're going to be able to get you a response within that timeline. Are you open to extending it? Otherwise, what happens is your offer never even makes it to the table, from the sense that the seller never even gets to respond because it's already expired. So keep that in mind, especially if it's a lowball offer, because lowballing them and then giving them unrealistic timelines, it's kind of a double whammy. Okay, next, when to counter offer. If the offer is low and the buyers are pre-approved and serious. Now, here's my take on that. When I take a listing, it's an agreement between the seller and I that I am not required to submit any offer unless it has the pre-approval, proof of funds, or they've shown documentation that they're listing their home and it's contingent upon that sale. The reason for this is there's absolutely no purpose of me negotiating the deal between the buyer and the seller, coming to an agreement, coming to a number, and then finding out Monday morning that the buyer is not qualified. It does not make sense. Some sellers will not even let you in the home until you've been pre-approved. Some sellers are okay. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't mind if you show it, whether they're pre-approved or not, but I do not want to negotiate until the buyer is pre-approved. And guys, I think that that is just smart business. It's smart for the seller so that the seller does not get confused. If you have 2 or 3 offers come in and they're pretty much full price, but none of those individuals actually qualify for a loan, that's monopoly money. Monopoly money. It doesn't mean anything. You can offer whatever you want because you can't get approved for the loan. The flip side, to protect the buyer, I would never let my buyer start negotiations unless they've spoken with a lender, because just how horrific for them to fall in love and be talking about, we're going to put the Christmas tree in that corner, this is going to be Johnny's room, this is going to be little Susie's room, and have the whole family excited and stirred up, and then find out Monday that there's an old collection and you cannot get qualified, or that payment amount does not work for the actual budget. So if they're serious and they're pre-approved, then I absolutely think that you should consider countering the offer. The other thing is if you've had limited showings. Guys, the market sets the value. Let me say that again. The market sets the value. If your home is not selling, if your home is not showing and selling, your price is not compelling. So if you know that your realtor is doing all of the marketing, and that is our specialty, we have Miss Jill here behind the camera, an award-winning marketer, and in charge of getting it in front of as many qualified buyers as possible, and we're not getting showings or qualified buyers in the door, then it is your price, because I can guarantee you we do more marketing than anyone else. But look at the marketing on your home, and if you know that it is on all of the sites, but you're not getting showings, it's probably the price. In that aspect, you get a lowball offer, I highly recommend that you consider countering rather than simply declining or rejecting. Next, if your home needs work, yes, I understand that you should not and do not want to put $20,000 into the home to get it sold. But in the same sense, you can't list at $310 if $310 is the value once the $20,000 worth of work is done. So if your roof is original and the home was built in 2001, guys, guess what? It's 2025. That roof is 24 years old now. It's hard to believe, but it's the truth. And so asking for the $310, knowing that it's going to need an entire new roof and that no other home in the neighborhood has sold at $310 without the new roof, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So that is definitely a situation where I would tell you to consider doing a counter offer, because negotiating is going to be the name of the game, making sure that you keep that on. Next, number 4 is when to simply walk away and decline. And in that case, if the buyer is basically showing no interest in negotiation, and again, I think this is where it's really important to find that realtor who is not afraid to pick up the phone and have a conversation. The buyer's agent and the seller's agent should sometimes communicate. And what I mean by that is a buyer's agent who's submitting a lowball offer should call the listing agent and say, here's the situation. I understand that we're putting in a low offer. However, they are cash, they can close in 30 days, there will be no stipulations, and put their best foot forward. Is your seller going to be open to negotiations, or are they going to stay firm and tight? And in that case, if they are, then we don't waste everyone's time. Now, as a listing agent, it doesn't matter what the seller has previously told me. I'm still going to contact the seller and walk them through that purchase offer, just to make sure that nothing has changed in their world. If the seller is not negotiable, if the buyer is not negotiable on the price, of course, the seller can just stay firm and choose to walk away, because if that buyer is like one and done, I've got to move on to the next home, then yes, it's totally fine to decline it and say, thank you so much, but no thank you. Next is if it's a cash offer, but there is unrealistic expectations. So they want to offer you cash, but it's contingent upon the sale of their home in New Mexico. They want a 25-day inspection. They want you to replace the new roof prior to the home inspection. I've actually had that happen several times where buyers requested that the seller make certain repairs, install a new heat and air unit, replace the roof, things like that based upon the age prior to inspections. Now that's just crazy, because the seller is doing something where the buyer can still walk away, but the seller now has a very, very large expense on the table. So even if it's a cash offer, but with unrealistic expectations, yes, I do think it's totally fine to decline. I still think that there's some education and negotiation that could be done in there. Again, trying to find out what is the buyer's actual motive here, and can they actually afford the home, or are they just trying to get an amazing deal? Okay, next is if they're just shopping or if they're serious. Now, this one gets kind of confusing. I do have a fair amount of my sellers who contact me and say, are they even serious? You know, my thinking on this is that, again, because I have an agreement with my sellers that only pre-qualified buyers can view the home, then yes, I do believe that they're serious in the sense that they've already jumped through the hoops to get pre-approved. So as a seller, you don't have to worry so much about, are they just shopping around? The buyer needs to show that they're pre-qualified, what type of loan, are there any stipulations with their loan, and then they need to put their offer in writing. Otherwise, guys, it's just two individuals talking and there's no way to hold them to it. And you could end up negotiating, giving your best and lowest number, and then that buyer is actually just shopping, not serious, and then they go tell your business all around town. So keep that in mind. And then again, just the red flags, long inspection periods, tiny earnest money. If the home is listed, you know, at $400,000 and they're trying to put up $500 or $0 for earnest, those are red flags. And then no lender contact information where they don't want to provide that. Huge, huge red flags. So make sure that you keep an eye out for that. And then the final thing is just the way we handle this in Tahlequah. Again, I've said it several times here. When a lowball offer comes in, first off, we try to connect with the buyer's agent, and then we see, is this an opportunity to educate the buyer's agent? Maybe they're from out of area also and don't understand that housing in Tahlequah just before the new semester starts gets really, really tight, or that the buyer is from out of area and maybe the agent is new and not educated enough to kind of work them through it. So the number one thing, the way we handle it on our team is educate and try to negotiate, do a combination of both, because the ultimate goal is to get the deal together at a number that makes the seller happy, and doing those two things will actually raise that. Also, keep in mind that when the first offer comes in, a lot of clients make the mistake of saying, okay, well, this is the first offer, why would we take it? Oh my goodness, this one kind of gives me high blood pressure. If it nets you the number that you were seeking, or very close to the number that you were seeking, guys, that first offer might be the best offer that comes out. And here's why. If you think of it as someone has just put a shiny new red car on a pedestal out front of the Ford place or the GMC place, I'm not a car person, so I don't know, yeah, and it is gorgeous, the people who want that car are going to rush in and pay whatever the list price is. Why? Because it's the only one. It is out there, it's new, it's shiny. Now, if that car is still there 3 weeks later, then they're going to say that car's been sitting there for 3 weeks. Now I want to negotiate the price. It's the same thing with the sale of a home. If a buyer has been looking for months and they've lost out on a few other transactions, or they just haven't found the one that has the bells and whistles, then a lot of times they will make a very strong offer based upon what the market is, and you, the seller, thinking that you should wait and see if the next buyer offers $2,000 to $3,000 more. It's not always the best thing. And in my 21 years of real estating, guys, I have seen this happen over and over again, where the seller regrets it 2 to 3 months later because the offers do not get higher. The longer the home sits on the market, the offers actually get lower. So keep that in mind. So this is how we would handle a lowball offer. Remember, don't take it personally. Don't get mad. Work with your trusted agent to try to educate or negotiate. Okay, guys, thanks for watching this episode. Please keep the questions coming. As always, I would love it if you would like, follow, and share.